All right. Welcome everybody to the regular council meeting, June 11th, 2025 of the city of Courtenay. Like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And we do have a recommendation to go in camera. Oh, because we already did that part. We did. So we're on to item number 2. That will be Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. As a late item, I'd like to move that we remove item 5.2.1 from today's agenda.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? See none. All those in favor? Motion carries. So item 5.2.1 will be removed from the agenda today. All right, adoption of minutes 3.1, regular council meetings from May 21st. All right, are there any errors or omissions on the minutes? Seeing none, we'll accept them unanimously and we'll move on to our presentation from BC Housing. And we have Tara Schmidt, I believe, is going to approach the podium, and Jennifer Fox, I think, as well. And maybe what I'll do is I'll get the podium fired up. There you go. Podium microphone is good to go. So Tara, the floor is all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you, members of the public, for attending tonight. I am Tara Schmidt. I'm the Acting Director of Regional Development for Vancouver Island, and this is my colleague, Jennifer Fox, who's the Regional Director of Vancouver Island for the operations side of things. If we can go to the next slide, please.
So you have a clicker if you'd like to, yeah.
Okay, boy.
And it should just be right click forward, left click back. Right. There we go.
Thanks for your patience with that. Okay, and BC Housing acknowledges that we conduct our activities on the homelands of thousands of Indigenous peoples and many nations across British Columbia, but we acknowledge particularly tonight and with gratitude that the area that we're discussing is situated on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. So our agenda tonight is to provide a brief update to Mayor and Council on the Braidwood Permanent Shelter and Supportive Housing and the timelines associated with that. Just a brief update on the Lodge, which is a current supportive housing building in the community, as well as some BC Housing updates, which are completed developments since 2017. Braidwood Permanent Shelter and Supportive Housing. As you can see on this slide, the top rendering is of the shelter, and this is coming from Ryan Road. And the next slide is, or the image below that is the permanent supportive housing below that. So this schedule here is just showing that the BC Housing has provisionally approved both projects to proceed. And so that really means that it's gone through various levels of our government approvals, BC Housing level, but all the way up to Treasury Board on one of the projects. And then this also, so that just also means that there's one more level of approval to go, which is final project approval. And so that with that one, we're aiming for fall this year to go to final project approval pending the outcome of a building permit, but also getting tendered pricing on both buildings. So what else we've completed so far is we've got the development permit has been issued. I want to say a special thanks to your staff. They've been incredible to work with. And we've also applied for the building permit application for both buildings. So we're moving along, and we acknowledge the construction start is November 2025, pending all of these approvals. And occupancy is summer of 2027 for the shelter and winter of 2027 for supportive housing. And we acknowledge that this date is slightly delayed from what we have previously told council before. There's certain reasons for this related to archaeology, geotechnical, and civil works. But we do want to acknowledge like the community's patience, not just mayor and council, but also the community, because we know that it's an effect on everybody. But we're really working hard on this, and I'll see work with our development manager to see if there's anything we can do to reduce this timeline. Oops. Okay, and over to you, Jen.
Thanks, Tara. Okay. So for selecting the operator, we are employing a competitive process. And so through BC Bid, a request for proposal for the shelter component was posted end of March. It was open for about 4 weeks. And we are in the process of doing the evaluations of the submissions and then hope to have an operator identified for early July. For the supportive housing, there's a few more tweaks that we need to do to the RFP, and it will be posted imminently, hopefully by Monday. And then it will be open as well for about 4 weeks, and we anticipate late summer for identifying the operator. Once we've identified the operator, we'll circle back for an engagement process in fall to introduce the operator to the community. Thanks, Tara. The Lodge. It's been a while since we had this conversation. We became operational as partners with Heather and her team, the city and BC Housing, and thank you for the partnership. 2023, the Lodge became operational, where we supported folks to move over into the Super 8, the former Super 8. We've got adults 19 years of age and older who are experiencing homelessness who live at the Lodge. Their supports provided, life skills. We've got obviously a very experienced operator through CBTS doing that great work. Security, they've got a fantastic fence. There's online or on-site staffing 24/7. And some residents of the Lodge have successfully transitioned to Mission Ridge Affordable Housing Project, which is moving from temporary supportive housing into independent affordable housing, which is fantastic. Thanks, Tara.
And these next few slides, I won't go through them in too much detail, but these represent projects that have completed within the community since 2017. So as you can see, there's a number of different types of projects that have completed, some related to homelessness, some related to women's transition societies, and some that are affordable housing or group homes. But we are really pleased today to also talk a little bit about the Not-So-Mott project, which also the Wache Friendship Center, which owns and operates the building, is here in this room tonight. And we're just pleased to see that that has opened just in the past couple of months, and that is for 40 units of Indigenous seniors housing. And we're looking forward to doing many more projects within your community. Thank you.
All right, so you're open for questions.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. I'll maybe start with one quick comment. One item that isn't on the list that you had here in front of us on those 2 slides is actually the Connect Center, which is on this list is the replacement for the Connect Center. I just want to point that one thing out because I think that's also something that has been certainly impactful for our community. So I just wanted to point that out
Okay,
before I
thank
pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for being here today. I have to tell you, I'm absolutely gobsmacked that we're not going to see this housing, this shelter until 2027. You mentioned the opening of the Lodge in 2023, and that was around the same time that we met with the housing minister and pressed on the urgent need for housing in this community, the urgent need for a purpose-built shelter, something that we had been pressing on the provincial government and BC Housing for years before that because of the inadequacy of the Connect Center, the flashpoint that it is for this community, the degradation that people are living in because of the inadequacy of that facility, the derision that they're subject to and that we are subject to as a result of what's seen as our basically enabling of that. So 2023, we meet with the minister, we get a commitment that BC Housing will in fact start an extensive land search to find land to build a shelter. That goes on, and we actually get word prior to Christmas of 2024, no, 2023, that, yeah, you've found the land. It's announced in March of 2024, a year ago. What has happened since then? I really appreciate that you've applauded the city for our staff pulling out of all the stops to do what we can for the approval process. But why are we only now selecting an operator? Why are we only now getting approval? We met the building contractor months ago who you guys told us was going to build this thing. So what's the delay? Why are we sitting here with a year after the purchase was announced and only now construction is going to start in 6 months and it's not going to be ready till 2027?
Councillor Hillian, thank you for your question and for your comments and for your concern. We appreciate hearing that. It is very common for buildings to take 2 to 3 years of pre-development prior to the start of construction. That is extremely common, given the fact that it has to go through rezoning, development permit applications, building permit applications. There's a lot of design reviews that have to happen. But also in this case, we also wanted to make sure we're working in a good way with the Comox First Nations. And also in this particular location, there's also archaeology concerns. So we had to really make sure that we're working and designing in accordance with that with our neighbors. And so we've also done quite extensive consultation on this project and met with nonprofit societies. We've met with unhoused people. We've met with neighbors. So we've done quite a lot to try and do this project in a good way, because we know that there is a lot of concern about it. But this timeline is actually reasonable for a development project. We just can't, unfortunately, there's nothing that we pull off the shelves and just start construction. We just have to go through the permitting process and the design process.
Yeah, I appreciate all those things, but I just want to point out that, you know, at the current time, we have housing being talked about it on a national level, and the need to get the barriers out of the way to get it done. And for some of these processes, as important as they are, to go on simultaneously so that we don't have to wait for all the work to be done until we do the next piece. And then we have that whole sequencing thing that results in the exact timeline that we've got here today. Yeah, I'm just gobsmacked. That's all I got to say.
I just want to echo some of Tara's sentiments and start with thank you for your patience. And this has been hard. It's taking longer than we collectively anticipated it would take. Sarah Smith and I were there when Minister Cowan was having that very important conversation, Mr. Mayor, with this council and mayor. We're happy to do that work together. It's taking more time than we thought for the archaeology pieces, the doing our work in a good way, the robust consultation that we've been engaged in, and getting things lined up for the contractor for the work to actually begin. And so it's not ideal and it's not what we wanted either. And we fully acknowledge that city had made a commitment to close down the current Connect shelter that is not ideal to operate as a shelter. And thank you for your patience with that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, so some of the frustrations that Councillor Hillian has is, you know, we meet regularly with our downtown businesses, and so we've been as forthright with them, and so a lot of the timelines that we've been told are the same timelines we've given out to our community, and of course, you know, yeah, it can be frustrating. I know there's lots more here, so I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Okay, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. Maybe just expanding on what Councillor Hillian said, I'm deeply saddened, and I think the frustration you're hearing, you know, from one end of the table really is about the sadness about the situation. And I really don't want to talk about how First Nations might be in the middle of this or involved in this. This is an emergency situation, and I think we really need to do better. You know, I think I don't know what the hiccups are on your end or the problems, but this seems like one of those situations where we go, like, we just have to get it done. And I don't know what it's going to look like for the next 2 years in our community as people continue to fall apart with drug addiction and mental illness, with not adequate support. I know we're going to wear it as a council, you know, what our downtown looks like, how people are suffering. Yeah, it's really frustrating and also really sad. So I just wanted to share that with you. But you know, I know you're in a tough position, but you know, what can we do? I think you've got a council and a community that want to work with you to get it done. So how about we get our heads together and get this done faster than 2.5 years. It's too long, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. Through the chair. We're alongside with you that we want this built as quickly as it can be as well. We see with you the number of unhoused persons you have and the great need for shelter space and for more purpose-built supportive housing. I'd like to offer, if there's conversations that it would be helpful for us to join with business community or, engagement to do some of that great work together, please let us know. I'm happy to come up myself and participate in some of those conversations. And where BC Housing takes that responsibility on delays, we can do that together. I think, bear with me here, I mean, the end result is Courtney will have a purpose-built shelter and more supportive housing, which I think is our goal together. So yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out if there's something else we can do to support conversations.
Excellent. And as a rep on the downtown business, our DCBIA, I'll definitely probably take you up on that because I know this is going to be a conversation that will be a hot topic at our next meeting. Maybe just to, there was a comment made, I know we have other councillors waiting, but there was a comment that about final project approval as yet another step. And that really stood out for me, and I'm having a hard time, especially after Councillor Hillian's comments and Councillor Frisch's, but that final project approval felt like that approval was given already. So that's where we're feeling, I personally just really concerned about that comment.
Oh, okay. And that is a BC Housing procedure. And what we do is provisional project approval is when we have like decent costing. We've got our designs are around 50%. We usually have a development permit in hand and we get some rough costing on things. But before we go to final project approval, we actually need to have tendered prices from our contractor. They've already gone out to every subcontractor, gotten a real price, and we go with a real budget and get that approval. And if that lines up with our provisional project approval, we're good to go. But that decision is made by our executive committee at BC Housing.
Okay, I probably have a follow-up if my councils don't, but I'm going to pass along right now to Councillor Morin.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I think you're going to get a lot of frustration directed towards towards this topic, and hopefully we can funnel some of that towards the province and not just to BC Housing, but yeah, where do you start? The archaeological issues, I understand that, and having that is, I don't know if you're having issues with the provincial body, which is a nightmare, and really the provincial organization is actually not following reconciliation practices by taking so long for these projects. We know that First Nations folks are disproportionately affected in terms of being unhoused. So I can't imagine that any archaeological process that is supportive of getting some people who are disproportionately affected into housing would be stalling. And if they are, then that's a big problem. I'm sure that Comox First Nation is doing everything they can to get people into homes. So also my understanding is that our staff have absolutely fast-tracked this project, and maybe staff could even give me a nod that we've done everything in our power to make this happen as quickly as possible. The bottom line is we're the ones that get it. It's not the province. It doesn't matter how many times we say the province is responsible for housing. We are the ones that get the brunt of it. And we had a point in time count recently. We haven't heard the results yet. It's probably through the roof. When this plan was put in place, it had already doubled, 272 people. I can imagine, I really hope it hasn't doubled again. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. The junction went up in 18 months is my recollection. I'm not quite sure why this is different. it's just beyond frustrating. It's going to be over 3 years, I believe, from the purchase of the property for the shelter to open, and then even longer for supportive housing. Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to once again go to the community and say, you know, this is not happening for another, 2 years. I mean, we can't do it. We don't even have winter shelter, consistent winter shelter space. We, it's just, it's not okay. And we need to send a message really clear that this is unacceptable, and we need to do whatever we need to do to fast track this 2027 date. It just can't happen. It has to be sooner than that. That's the bottom line. I'll probably have other things to say, but right now I'm probably too emotional to make tons of sense. But I just think of the people that are gonna spend another winter, 2 winters, 2 more winters, 2 more winters. I mean, it's unconscionable to me. And in addition to that, they're going to get the hate on social media. They're going to have the vigilantism towards them. They're going to have, just the degradation, and we're going to have our community, against each other, like divided. All this does is perpetuate that division that we see in our community. And it's misdirected criticism. The city's doing everything it can. We put that out in our communication. People don't believe us. They doubt that we're doing everything we can. Anyway, I'll let other people talk. Thanks.
Man, not sure if you want to respond.
I'm happy to respond, and thank you, Councillor Moore. And I really hear the care and compassion that the city has for the unhoused people here. And so I'm just glad we're all on the same team. We're all doing the best we can to provide housing for unhoused people. And that's really the name of our game, BC Housing. And I do apologize that it's taken longer than anticipated. And I will commit to looking internally with our development staff to see if can we shave this even by a month? Like, I would love nothing more than to see this built faster. And I'll commit to looking into that further with people to see what we can do on our end.
Yeah, much appreciated. And
Yeah.
Councillor Moore did say, the junction was 18 months, but I believe it was actually closer to 12. And that was, again, very aligned philosophy from the city and housing, and really working to make sure that there were no barriers in place to make sure that we were able to get things done as quickly as possible. And again, I think you're hearing that we're still at the table. We still want to do this as quick as possible. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. And you're probably going to hear the same thing. And this is not necessarily meant to impugn the work that you two people have done. This is about BC Housing and the processes it has failing people. Like it's just hard to understand how one can say something's an emergency and then deliver a solution 4 years later. It's like if you call the fire department and they say, well, we can come next Thursday. How's that? It's just not an acceptable solution to the scale of the crisis. And as my colleagues have pointed out, hundreds of people will sleep out in the cold day after day for 2 winters, and some of them may not make it through. They may not be around in 2027 when this building is finally constructed. I also think about the junction, and I think the way that was developed was concurrent. Everything was moving along at the same time. You didn't do one thing, then find the operator, then do this. Anyway, it was done in a remarkably short period of time. It would be, by my count, 23 months between, almost 2 years between BC Housing acquiring the property and the first shovel going in the ground versus a complete building with an operator in 12 months. The question I have, though, is about BC Housing's approval, which is hoped to come in October. And I guess that opens the question of BC Housing not approving that. What is the likelihood of that? And what will we do if BC Housing does not approve this?
I can't speak for our executive committee because they ultimately have they have their review and approval power. But once a project goes to provisional project approval, in all likelihood, it will be approved, but I cannot speak for our executive.
And maybe as a quick little follow-up to that, just because, again, that was one of the things that jumped out at me on that final project approval. But the other, I thought I had heard a comment also, as long as the price was still in line or the cost was still in line. And I just look at the escalations that we've seen in construction costs over the last few years, and it seems difficult for something to take that much time and not have a cost escalation. So I don't know if you can comment maybe on whether or not there was sufficient buffer put in there.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We definitely add contingency at the time of our provisional project approval. We account for escalation contingency up to the time of final project approval. We're not anticipating much risk on this one. We definitely want to see this built. We know that this is a priority for your community, but it's also a really big priority for us as well to get these two projects built.
Thanks so much for that. Councilor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for joining us today. You know, I don't think there's any comments that have been made tonight that I don't agree with, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time repeating those sentiments. Other than to say, like, to see the challenges that our community is facing when it comes to the impacts of so many people living without shelter, and to have made it as far in this process as finding a suitable piece of land and rezoning it and seeing it move to that point, and then seeing it not progress in any way as what we had expected or been communicated with from BC Housing seems particularly egregious, I think, especially, you know, for people working with this community, our downtown, of course, the people living on our streets who have nowhere to sleep, and our council. And the other frustration that I have around this is that we're hearing how robust that engagement has been with those impacted and with Comox First Nation, which is great to hear, but yet it's been almost a year since we've had an update on this project. And basically what we're hearing is like not a lot has really progressed, certainly not on the timeline that we were last heard. And to me, that doesn't really feel like great engagement from an important partner in this. So that's one piece of feedback that I would just like to add. The question that I have is, you mentioned in the slide that that the development has yet to go to tender, or the construction, and there was no timeline provided for that. So like, how much certainty do we have around when it's going to tender? Because that seems like the next, I don't know, step in this process.
Thank you, Councillor McCollum. So there's several steps in the design phase. Right now, we have the building permit level drawings. Next step is the issued for tender drawings, which will need to be issued. Once those are issued, then we go out for tender. And then there's still a final step, which is the issued for construction set of drawings. And so while I admit we've been silent on engagement for the past year, we've been really busy on the design side and going through all of our municipal processes. And there's a lot of coordination that has to happen between all of the different consultants, structural, mechanical. There's a lot of things happening. And because there's two buildings, it's really two projects. So I hear you that we could have done better on providing an update, but there is actually a lot of stuff happening in the background to progress it.
Yeah, well, I would just add that that may be the case, but we're seeing a major change to the timeline that was last communicated, and it's a year later, and this is when we're getting that information. So, you know, this is how it appears on my side of the table, and I realize that obviously doesn't include all the details of the situation, but to me, I just don't understand why we're getting this information so late in the process. And then if you could answer the question around when it would be going to tender, because it sounds like that's the next piece.
If you don't mind, I'll just capture
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first part, which is, yes, we should have shared an update sooner. And it has been a year since we've had this conversation last, and we acknowledge that. And thank you very much for that feedback. We've heard you. Yeah.
Thanks, Terry.
Around the tender timing, if we are going for final project approval in October, I'm just going to do some quick math in my head. I would assume the tender will be going out probably next month because it typically goes out for about a month to 6 weeks. And then we get the budget and then we put it into our submission, which goes to the executive committee. So it should be going out for tender very shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCullum and Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for coming. I also won't repeat, but I share the exact same sentiments as my colleagues. Sounds like there's probably some conversations we could be having with BC Housing executives around some of the feedback that's been provided and outstanding processes. I did want to just kind of highlight that, and I know that we have allies in the room from the Coalition to End Homelessness, folks with lived and living experience and people who work with unhoused populations every day. And similar to Councillor Cole Hamilton's comments, I think it does need to be named that we will, the data shows and the research shows we will lose people between now and when this opens. The number one cause for premature death for adults is housing, and lack of housing leads to death. So it is an emergency in that way. And I know that everyone around this table understands that. And of course, people at BC Housing understands that. But I think that this does have real life impacts on people in our community. And I also want to just highlight that this project, although we've received quite a lot of feedback, was also supported by a multitude of organizations that make up the Coalition to End Homelessness. And I appreciate that they're here today out of the care for this project. And it is a necessary project. And I look forward to seeing the point in time count when that does get released. And I guess without repeating my colleagues' comments, it was alluded to the fact that we have been unsuccessful to date in securing funding for winter shelter, a permanent winter shelter, temporary permanent winter shelter, rather than an extreme weather shelter or otherwise. And in the absence of the permanent purpose-built shelter and permanent supportive housing at Braidwood, we are left to likely have to go through an entire process with BC Housing. Staff are leading a winter shelter strategy that will be completed shortly, that will really highlight the need in the community and the operational requirements for that. And so I understand that you probably can't give us a yes, Jennifer, in this moment, but I do want to just name that as we have communicated our role in this as the regulator of zoning, and we've taken leadership role in the Comox Valley more broadly, as has the Coalition to End Homelessness. This has fallen largely on the City of Courtenay and the City of Courtenay taxpayers and the residents and businesses who are impacted by these services that support people who need shelter. And so because we won't have this, at least we knew that we wouldn't have it this coming winter, but there will be an additional winter. I'm wondering if you can speak to maybe the impact of the delay on funding for winter shelter.
Mm-hmm. Through the chair, thank you for the question. Just an overall update before I get to the specific question about Courtenay community here. BC Housing's process for temporary winter shelter program has changed for this current fiscal year. And so we will be putting on BC Bid a request for proposal qualifier. And so what we're looking for is nonprofit operators who are interested in operating temporary winter shelters are welcome to submit for the RFPQ. And then from there, once a community has been, I'll use the word awarded, bear with me here, and I'll come back to that in a moment, funding for temporary winter shelter, we would do a very quick invitational RFP to identify the operator for that specific location. So that's a process change at BC Housing for a competitive process. We can anticipate the RFPQ going out in the next couple of weeks. I can't give you anything more firm than that. That's my knowledge at this time. With respect to Courtney, we've had conversations with city staff about temporary winter shelter. At our end, we have added Courtney as a priority community for the list of communities that we are putting forward seeking funding for under a TS temporary winter shelter. From there, that request for funding, the full list provincially, based on priority and our recommendations from the regional level, which includes being supported by data. And bear with me here, I know we're talking about people when I use the word data. And so I don't want to minimize that. We're talking about people experiencing homelessness. And so we use that information to put forward. And then BC Housing's executive committee, which is our CEO and our VP level, review, and then they approve the funding allocation from there. And as soon as we have confirmation from our executive, we will communicate to the communities who are approved to proceed. But like I said, regionally, we have identified Courtney as a priority. That's not a promise right now because, as I said, executive approves the final funding decision. And I hear you about the processes within BC Housing. And I think that maybe we could do a better job at our end to communicate how decisions are made provincially and within BC Housing. So that's some work we need to do. So thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, I just have one more question, Mayor, if that's okay. I think there's only one other mic on. Which is related to the fact that I think that in the absence of, I know that the point in time count will be released in the coming weeks, months, maybe. I think the last analysis that we did from the 2023 data demonstrated that the city of Courtney, the Comox Valley, had a higher per human count than many of the much larger lower mainland municipalities. So that's not a per capita figure. That's like an actual how many humans were unsheltered in 2023 when that count was done. And per Councillor Morin's comments, we likely suspect that that will have gone up. And so I think I really appreciate you advocating on our behalf that this community does need these services at a rapid pace. My question around efficiencies, because the province is committed to efficiencies, and I appreciate the temporary winter shelter sounds like that's an easier process than the previous one. With Bill 15, the Infrastructure Act, is there any way that this project could be considered by Cabinet as something that would fall under that purview under the Infrastructure Act, which would allow Cabinet to make a decision pertaining to some of the outstanding regulatory processes that you're engaged in?
It's an interesting question. I'm not to deflect. I'm happy to take that back and have internal conversations. Just sort of what our process is after we have these kinds of meetings and conversations is we take this back internally at BC Housing with our senior leadership team and at times our executive to brief up on what we're hearing and some of the questions, concerns, and comments. And I'd like to bring that to the conversation, Councillor, if that's all right with you. I'm going to bring that forward as a possible opportunity. The other thing, and this is more the peek behind the curtain, we also have our executive and our provincial partners who also ask us for projects updates as well. And so they're aware that there's a delay here as well, and we will definitely communicate the concerns from the community and council. Yeah, thank you for that question about Bill 15.
Much appreciated. Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur. Councillor Morin.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I do have a couple questions. Just in response to the, I appreciate you saying, you know, there could be better communication on timelines and processes. I really don't think people care. I think they want to see people housed, and I don't think that communicating out the reasons for the decisions really satisfies anyone. So anyway, so the questions are just going back to the junction. I thought it was 18 months, but it sounds like it was 12 months. This project will be 3 times longer. So allowing for the, excuse me, the extra you know, the specific issues that are different, like the archaeological, I'd like to ask why this project is 3 times longer than the junction. That's the first question. I have one more.
Councillor Moran, I'm going off some notes here, but I'm not very familiar with the junction and the development process with that, so I can't speak super specifically about it. But I do understand that that was modular housing on that one, and then and that we that we had maybe more capacity at the time, I think. But I don't ever want to say that we don't have enough capacity. I know we're working really hard and we've got a lot of projects on the go. But in this case, we are talking about 2 specific projects, not just one. And then one is fairly new. We don't often do purpose-built shelter. That's a bit of a newer model. So we had to do some extra discussions with Island Health and some partners around how this would look. What does the design need to have? Things like that. But the typical construction timelines for a building of this size really are 18 to 24 months. So that construction period is very standard. But some of the things that we're looking at right now at BC Housing is how do we speed things up? Why are we individually designing every single building? Are there things we can do around design to really shorten the design timeframe? And so we're definitely looking at that because we do realize that it's slow and it's not responding as quickly as communities really need it to respond to the housing crisis. So we are looking at that and seeing what we can do internally to do better.
Great. I'd like to suggest that maybe we throw out what we're doing and go back to a model that is faster, because the junction, I've been there numerous times. I know people who live there. The building is great. The actual building's great. I think let's not be tied to these processes that take too long. You know, maybe that needs to be rethought. Okay, we thought about this. We thought we'd do it differently, but we need this happening now, not in 3 years. So, and then my second question was just around, and Councillor Jolicoeur touched on it a bit, but the provision of Connect services. We've been really clear. Every time we've extended that the use of that space in our downtown core, we've never wanted to do it. And I'm wondering, like, I can't see, I mean, I don't know what the rest of council thinks. I can't see us continuing on that path. So I'm wondering, what is your alternative to the provision of those services outside of the core while we're awaiting this housing and shelter?
Respectfully, I'm wondering if you could sort of provide more detail.
Well, I'm wondering, in terms of those services, they've already been in the downtown core for 3 times longer than this council communicated to the public. So what will be the solution to providing those services if they're not in the downtown core any longer?
I would say that would be a conversation that we're happy to join with city staff and partners, providers, if that's what the city would like to do, to talk about where BC Housing funding could be made available.
And I just want to say that it's got nothing to do with the provider of those services, because they have been unbelievably responsive. We've seen the work at the lodge, how amazing that is, what you can do with a space that is conducive to the services. The building downtown is not. It never has been. The provider has done, you know, cartwheels to make that an incredible space for what they have. It just, yeah, it's not adequate. We know that. We've known that for years. So I really hope that those will be some conversations that happen before, you know, the rain starts falling and the snow starts falling, etc. Thanks.
We're happy to continue the conversations about temporary winter shelter. And we also have extreme weather response, and those are the funding programs that BC Housing has. And we're happy to continue those conversations with city staff.
Excellent. Appreciate that. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of things. First of all, thanks for dealing with this today, for bearing the brunt of our concern. I know that these are systemic problems and they don't reflect who you are and your deep concern for the work that you do. So I just want to acknowledge that. I did have a question about the point in time count. And I don't know whether you can answer it or not. I've volunteered on it each time that it's been done, and I've never understood why we can't get the results the next day. Since we basically collect all the data, we have the data, and then somehow it gets sent off somewhere, and 6 months later, we get a report.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have an update on the point in time count. I'm happy to connect with our homelessness lead, but yeah.
It's just another systemic issue that doesn't make any sense to me. So thanks for looking into that. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council send an urgent request to meet with the Minister of Housing to discuss the possibilities for fast tracking this project.
Thank you so much for that. Any questions or comments regarding the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, thank you, Councillor Hillian, and I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I just wanted to circle back to where this all started. We asked what the sort of causes of the delay in the timeline were, and what I heard was archaeology, geotechnical, civil works, and consultation. And I'm wondering, just because we're going to have to explain this to an awful lot of people, specifically with each of those, what happened? Like, what was the geotechnical issue? What are civic works?
Yeah.
Just-
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. So because there is an unknown archaeology on this site, we needed to ask for extra permits and extra archaeology investigations and work with the nation on that. We needed these permits in place prior to proceeding with extra geotechnical work and drilling on the site, so that we would make sure that we were not affecting the archaeology. So that did result in some delays just with that period. We did work with the archaeology branch, so they were very helpful to us as well. And then Copax Nation was very helpful. So we did try to reduce that effect as much as we could. And then in terms of civil works, there was just some extra, there's flow reports, and I've got civil professional reliance that had to happen. And just unfortunately, some of these things just add up. Like an extra week here, 2 weeks there, 1 month here, it all adds up. And that's where we're at today.
Sorry, I was going to ask if you could just clarify those civil works. You went through them quite quickly, and it sounds like they're all being done one after the other. Is the model to do things concurrently rather than one after the other?
Well, I can't speak specifically about the timing because I'm not the development manager on this project. But my understanding, I did ask for a summary of why these things took longer, and all of the civil works, I believe, added up to an extra 2 months on the project. But as many things as we can do concurrently, we do concurrently.
And we're also happy to have a follow-up conversation with city staff and provide more details in terms of timelines and the different steps. And I think that would be
Okay, I think
beneficial.
that would be helpful. And just a statement, you said you're not the right person to talk to about timing, and unfortunately, that is the issue. If there's someone else we need to talk to at BC Housing before we meet the minister, please let us know who that is. If there's someone who has greater authority or knowledge over timing.
Yes, yes, we can definitely work with the staff, and we'll come up with this. We'll provide a summary of exactly where there was specific delays, and we can put some timing with that so that the staff are aware of where there were delays.
Yeah, sorry, my follow-up question was, you said you're not the right person to talk in detail about timing. Who is that person, and might we be able to speak with them so we understand things more clearly before we approach the minister?
We do have a specific development manager assigned to both of these projects. She does work closely with your staff. And so while I'm not necessarily I don't have the detailed notes of which exact reports or permits or things might have taken an extra week or 2 weeks or 1 month. I am still accountable for all of the projects. So I do take accountability for not having that at my fingertips.
Okay, well, I appreciate that
Yeah.
you're able to get the right people who do have that information to follow up with staff. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I'm really looking forward to another update on how we can maybe speed this up. I heard you say that you will look into that seriously, and I'm also interested in talking about what option we have for the next 2 years for our downtown homeless situation. And later in this meeting, I'll see if it makes sense to move a motion to have that meeting with you guys to talk about that some more as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Just in terms of communication, I know that you have done some press releases to the public over the last while. Not one recently, but definitely around the time of the purchase, et cetera. And I'm wondering if there's any barriers to you putting out any communication in light of what we've heard tonight and the significant delays, on the reasons for the delays, and also the accountability and responsibility being on BC Housing, on the province, and not on the city of Courtenay.
We're happy to have a conversation with city staff about where BC Housing may be able to support the communication and update our external website as well. And we can outline some of the reasons for the delay and emphasize the partnership between BC Housing and the city. Additionally, regarding the steps, the process, how decisions are made, why things have delays, and that type of question, we'll take that back with city staff and we'll get some answers for council. And we'll also ensure that our minister is briefed up as well to prepare for the conversation.
Thanks, Councillor Moore and Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks. And actually, I'm really happy that you spoke about the Let's Talk Housing BC.ca site for Courtenay, Braidwood, and Ryan Road, because when I looked at it this weekend, it had the previous timelines. And when I checked it today, it has your revised timelines on the right-hand side for those who want to look at home, with no rationale provided on the site. So perhaps that's, if you can add a section providing the delay in the site, that's I think the
We'll
potential.
talk to our comms team
Yeah.
about what's possible.
Great.
In terms of options for communicating
Cool.
the changes. Yeah.
And then my other, if we go back a few slides to the component around the operator, because I think that's something that's going to happen and could be generative for us, is I'm really happy to see that laid out. I hope that the community will show up to that future engagement. I know that it's a practice of BC Housing to connect community within with the operators. And so I'm just seeing here a fall 2025. I understand that you'll be selecting the two operators over the next 2 months. So is it possible for us to have a commitment to have the two of you back in the fall to speak to the operator and the engagement process with the community?
Just to clarify, to attend the engagement or
Come back to council to maybe share what you've heard through the engagement with the operator and maybe invite the operator.
I think that's something that BC Housing could commit to doing. Yeah.
Great. I think, again, just keeping lines of communication open and to keep the public aware for those who maybe not are able to participate in that process.
We're happy to support the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, going back to sort of the long timeline since last time, and then of course the abrupt, or what feels to us to be an abrupt change in the schedule. Obviously, if things are expedited, we'd probably want to hear that even sooner. Any good news obviously would be something we want to hear as quickly as possible. But I don't see any I do see another question, Councillor Healy.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I forgot to mention earlier, thank you for the list of the housing built since 2017. And in particular, I want to acknowledge the work you did with the lodge, which we gave you a lot of stick about at the time. You guys were right and we were wrong on that. And it's worked out really well. And, we'd like to see more of that sort of speed with which we know you can operate. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. And I just want to thank Mayor and Council and the community of Courtenay for the partnership collectively to bring the lodge to operations. It's running really well and it looks fantastic. And we're helping a bunch of people. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. And I speaking on my behalf, I appreciate the passion and the heart in Courtney. And so thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation today and to continue to partner.
Yeah, no, it's much appreciated, and it may or may not have been included in that list you had there, but I know, you know, Salvation Army was able to increase their capacity, and even at the Connect Center, I mean, there's the shelter part of it, but just the day services as well, and just the outreach that happens there. Again, just seeing the impact that it has, the positive impact, and you know, and I think that's where council really puts a lot of its effort. But of course, it's the other impacts that the downtown businesses feel pretty frustrated, and so you know, as we're talking about our new vitalization plan for our downtown, you know, obviously this project is key to that as well. So we just want to make sure that everything keeps moving forward. So really appreciate you guys keeping up under the heat tonight. I know there's definitely some frustration based on these timelines. We do have a motion to get a letter off to meet with the minister and see if there's anything we do to expedite things that way. So, oh yeah, Councillor
Sure.
McCollum.
Thanks so much, and thanks again for hearing us out tonight. If I could just make one request before you leave, and that would be to update council immediately if any of the timelines that we've discussed tonight have changed. Like what I'm hearing is the expected construction is November for the site to be actively under construction. I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth there. And so if that timeline changes, could we be made aware at the time that that is understood and not, you know, once November rolls around and we see that there's nothing happening?
We can definitely commit to updating you if there's any change from November 2025. Our definitions of construction start may be different, but we'll make sure that we're communicating with your staff so that they can update you, but definitely we'll commit to that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
And I think to that point, it's not necessarily that you have to come in person, but I mean, even to we get correspondence to council. So if you do those updates to staff, if you could just make sure it's articulated that for council, and then that way it can end up on our agenda so that we're all updated. I think that hopefully might expedite things as well, because we know we're not the only community. We obviously feel like we're, you know, this is the one that we're in charge of, so to speak, and the one that we're looking out for to the best of our efforts. But we know there's other communities that you're looking after. But really, again, want to thank you for your time this evening, and keep doing the good work. And if there's any ways that we can do things faster, then obviously we're all ears. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, council, for that. And that moves us into council reports. Sorry, staff reports. Sorry about that. And just looking out into the gallery, I know some people may feel the need to leave. I won't hold that against you. But I did want to, I think Scott might be doing that for me, actually. So we'll move on to staff reports. 5.1.1, antenna system proposal for 1000 Piercy Avenue. Mr. Garbett.
Thank you. Through the mayor, our manager of development approval planning, Jamesh Shealy, is going to introduce this important project.
Chair Garbett, Mayor and Council. Before you is a staff report. It's a combination of information for council, as well as seeking council's directions for next steps. Before I go right into the heart of the proposal itself, I did want to mention that we do have Brian Gregg, and he should be joining us via Zoom. He is the agent on behalf of TELUS Communications. He works for SitePath Consultation. If council were to have any questions regarding the proposal itself, he is available to take those questions. And the other piece of background information I can share here is over the last year, when TELUS approached the city regarding this proposal, a number of departments, key departments, worked in collaboration to identify kind of key considerations, to look at appropriate siting for the antenna system on city lands, as well as consider any implications as they relate to this proposal. So this has really been a collaborative effort across a variety of different departments, as noted in the report. So I wanted to acknowledge that work. So with respect to the proposal itself, TELUS Communication approached the city and an agent has been engaged on this proposal as noted. The subject property is 1,000 Percy Avenue. This is currently city-owned land. It's known as the Public Works Yard, and it is an active city property. The Works Yard is currently zoned Industrial 2. It is consistent with the current uses of the zones happening there. The proposal itself is to locate an antenna system, a 44-meter antenna tower, a monopole tower with a 2-meter lightning rod. That would be in association with an equipment building housed within a 15 by 50 meter compound that would be fenced. And that would be located within the subject property on the northwest corner. A separate access point is anticipated. The access point would be off of 8th Street. And again, that would be across city land, which is currently zoned Industrial 3. Speaking to the need in the community, we are aware that there are service gaps for wireless service, particularly in West Courtenay. This application, if supported with council, would provide a strategic location for a telecommunication infrastructure that is needed in our community. With respect to the height of the tower, the service provider informs us that it is the required minimum height to be able to provide a high level of connectivity to the service level required for this area. With respect to how we would proceed with an application of this type on city lands, it is relatively unique. So staff has presented several steps in that process. The process would include first and foremost authorization from council, as this is city lands. And that authority is not currently delegated to staff, so that would be a decision of council. The second item we're supported by council would be for proceeding with a development variance application. So the city would be the applicant in that case, and the variance is to seek accommodation for both the height and the siting of the tower from the rear setback of the property. A development variance permit does involve public consultation, so that would be forthcoming. And at the same time, the applicant would also have a separate public consultation process as per the federal requirements and our own policy on telecommunication towers. And then the third piece is entering into a license of occupation. At being city land, we would enter into an agreement with TELUS Communication on the use of that land and the compensation for that use, as set out in the report. So with that, I think I'd like to conclude my remarks and to open it up to any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for the great report, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And thanks for the staff report. Quite thorough. And I appreciate that Brian is with us because my questions are actually mostly for Brian, I think. In the attachment rationale letter regarding TELUS's development variance permit application, I had a few questions. Hopefully, Brian, you're able to respond. So on the, let's see, what page is this? On the table 1, question 1, speaks about the work that TELUS has done around locating other properties, either public or private. And so I'm wondering, it does say your response, there are no existing structures suitable within a 1 kilometer radius of the subject proposed tower. And so I'm wondering if you can speak in detail to that analysis, that work, whether it be public or private lands.
Certainly, through the mayor to the councillor. And can you all hear me clearly?
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay, excellent. So
essentially what we always do for any proposed communication site is before we propose a new structure, there are federal regulations in place that require proponents to see if there's opportunities for co-location. Usually what that entails is looking for existing structures, including existing towers that we might co-locate on from other service providers. Sometimes they're hydro towers, and other opportunities are rooftops. So many of our antenna sites are actually co-located on the rooftops of buildings. Unfortunately, within the entire area, there are no existing structures of a suitable height or location that would enable us to provide the needed service enhancements. So it was determined that a new tower would need to be proposed. So there are no such opportunities within the entire area that we're aware of.
Okay. My second question, Mayor, because I don't see any other lights, is table 1, question number 3. It speaks to, again, this is I imagine a federal regulation around heritage sites. There is a heritage site actually right next door, and in TELUS's response, it speaks to not having any in the vicinity. So I'm just trying to understand how to rectify that. It's the ICF train station.
Thank you. Yeah, through the mayor to councillor. So actually, we've been in touch with ICF, and as part of this project, we are aiming to get actually an additional access agreement from them to enable us to help with the staging and storage of our construction equipment, so that we don't have to tie up the works yard during the construction period. So that'd be, I guess, be my first comment, is that ICF is well aware of the proposal. I don't want to speak on their behalf directly, but I'm of the impression that at least verbally they're supportive and working with us actively towards a bit of a partnership here and a mutually beneficial agreement. So I don't have an impression that they have concerns with that. They haven't raised them up, but I do appreciate you pointing that out. One thing I can say in relation to that is what we have done with our design is proposed what we would call like a flush mounted monopole design. So it's the slimmest available tower structure available. And I would say the most aesthetically integrated type of design that we're able to come up with. We can paint it any color of the city's choice, sometimes, for example, forest green to try to blend in with the backdrop of foliage or trees. And there's other treatments we can do, such as attractive fencing at the base of the compound to sort of blend it in as much as possible. So there are things that we can do to make sure we don't impact, the heritage of the area. And I guess my final remark would be, we should have certainly noticed that, but I guess our impression was, having visited the area and looked at the zoning, was that it does have a bit of a light industrial kind of a feel with the rail tracks, the works yard property, and then to the east and northeast, more industrial zone properties. So while there may be a heritage site at the train station, I guess the feeling of the area and the zoning of the area, it does feel compatible to the extent possible.
Yeah, and I think generally I would agree with you. I'm not entirely sure if this document gets sent to the feds, and I think that we should articulate the accurate representation. And I think the sentence says the proposed tower location is not within the vicinity of a known heritage site. So given that there is one directly next door, that we should have that be reflective in that response. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, you sort of have a verbal acknowledgement from ICF. So what might be useful is maybe get an actual in writing letter from them stating their opposition or lack of opposition for the project. And again, if you're already talking about land access with them, then it seems that would make good sense. Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. A couple questions, I guess. First one for the proponent. I was wondering how far from the antenna will the antenna serve, I assume for cellular service, right?
Thank you. Through the mayor to the councillor. So our anticipation, I guess, speaking about it verbally, I don't have a coverage map with me, but we could follow up with that as well to illustrate it graphically. I find that's always the best way to answer these questions. But my understanding is the signal will travel northwest to Puntledge Park area. and then all the way down to Willamar Avenue. And then we do have an additional tower site that we've upgraded, and actually we got approval through council, I believe it was last year, to upgrade our existing tower site at 2981 Moray Avenue in the light industrial area there. So that's already been upgraded. So in conjunction, those two sites, we think will provide contiguous coverage all the way from Moray Avenue all the way up to Puntledge Park. We also have a third rooftop antenna site proposed at 801 Ryan Road. So that'll be just antennas on a rooftop, and that's going to be going through the building permit process at the city as well. So this proposal, in other words, is one of three such antenna sites intending to service the city. And when combined, we think there should be very reliable connectivity. And then outside of that, more generally, we also have two additional sites within the Comox Valley, one on Eleanor Road and another rooftop site at 2200 Muralette Drive. So there's a total of 5 investments in infrastructure that TELUS is proposing in the area. And when combined, we think the coverage will be quite an improvement. So maybe what I can do to answer your question more intelligently is follow up with some coverage maps.
That was fine. It was a good estimate of where it travels. Thank you. Does it serve all the cellular service customers in Courtenay in that area?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
I was wondering if the tower is going to serve all the cellular customers in the area.
That is a good question. I don't actually know if everyone will be within the coverage footprint. I imagine there will still be some gaps because it's quite a large geographic area within the entire valley. But I would think within the city proper, there should be reliable connectivity for just about every household. But I think, again, the best way for me to get to the bottom of the question would be to get you some coverage maps.
It was more a question, sorry to cut you off, Brian. It was more a question of, like, I don't know how the cellular service works, but I assume there are people who don't have TELUS service. And I assume that this will not serve them, but I was just clarifying, maybe I'm wrong on how your towers work.
So if they're Rogers or Kudo or somebody else.
Great. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. Yeah, so effectively TELUS infrastructures for TELUS, which also serves Bell customers in Western Canada. So TELUS and Bell have a partnership where Bell rides on TELUS's infrastructure in Western Canada. And then from Ontario East, TELUS piggybacks on Bell's infrastructure. So TELUS and Bell, and then all of the, I guess you could say, subsidiaries of those companies. So for TELUS, there's Kudo and Public Mobile. So all of those would be served, but you're right, this would not provide a service improvement for Rogers or Freedom Mobile customers. However, the one I think important caveat to that is anybody, even if they don't subscribe to any service provider, can make a call to 911 if they have a wireless device that's charged.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, so that service will be provided to everyone.
Thanks for that. Mayor, can I have a follow-up for the staff?
Yeah.
Thanks. So question to staff then, I guess it brings up the concern that we typically try to stay out of competition of businesses. And so is there some way that if some other company wanted to come in and provide the same service in the same way that we would accommodate that? Or is that once we agree to this, is that kind of like, well, the first through the door gets all the service?
Mayor, and I'm actually going to also kind of tap in Mr. Gregg on this one. Brian, with arrangements between cell service providers, can you have more than one operator on the tower?
Yeah, thanks, Jemai. So how it works, there's a federal protocol in place that requires that the wireless carriers cooperate with one another if there's an application for co-location. So for instance, if Rogers or Freedom Mobile or really any third-party service provider were to express interest to co-locate on the tower or share it, TELUS would be required to offer a position on the structure. Now, given that it's municipal land, and really actually on any property, it can also be subject to, of course, the property owner, in this case, the municipality, agreeing to grant space or access to that third party. So it's not like the city's obligated to, give an unknown third party access to the property, but it wouldn't be TELUS, I guess is what I'm trying to say. that would prevent that from happening. We would have to offer them, any available space on the structure. Now, we don't know whether or not there's necessarily going to be interest from other third parties, so that would be up to them, to express that interest. But it is quite common, as you're probably aware, to see cell towers that are shared.
Yeah, well, that's great, and I appreciate you clarifying the question for me there, Mrs. Shile. I guess that my statement or my comment would be that I'd want to make sure that this being on city land, that it's a fair opportunity for other service providers to also use our land, and that financially it would be reasonable for them to do so. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch, thanks for the question. Getting access and siting cellular towers has proved to be an incredible challenge in the Comox Valley. So we're hopeful that there'll be positive here because there's economic development, public safety implications of having no coverage. And we have a site that's publicly owned in an industrial area with limited impact. So we're hopeful it's attractive in that. But at the same time, agree, the city, there was some reference to revenue and opportunities. So the city would want to do that. It's extremely common that when municipal facilities are utilized for these, that co-location opportunities are required, and those revenue and access to the generalized market to the public benefit is there. So thanks for that.
Thanks, and thanks, Councillor Frisch. And maybe as a follow-up to Councillor Frisch's comments, and I know he did say he wasn't necessarily interested in those coverage maps, but I think those would be really useful for council if you're able to forward them onto staff, and if you say attention to council, because that's information that we can share with the public. And because again, at the end of the day, there can be different perspectives on cell towers, and in this case, I think our council is quite acutely aware of how poor the cell service is in that area. So this improvement is definitely something that is even just from a safety perspective a positive thing. So would definitely be interested in seeing those coverage maps. And I'll pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Ironically, my wife and I were driving down Lake Trail Road earlier today, and she said, is there any way the city could do anything to improve the cell service around here? I said, well, funny thing, we have this on our agenda tonight. I'm curious, it sounds like there's a lot of bureaucracy that we have to sort through here, but how quickly, once that's done, can you actually install and make operational this antenna?
Thank you for the question through the mayor to the councillor. So my understanding, having talked to our project management office, is that it's actually quite a unique situation in the Comox Valley and City of Courtenay, where we're making those 5 investments. And the goal is to have them all on air as soon as possible, of course, subject to getting the required land use approvals. So there's a bit of a chicken and egg thing here. We can't, of course, confirm the exact timeline until we have the approvals in place, but the objective is to have them on air this year, if possible. So imminently.
Well, maybe, Mayor, I could help the process along by moving the recommendation.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Frisch, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just quickly, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I just want to make sure that in fact there is some accommodations or clauses or whatever in the agreement that make sure that, while I really appreciate this proponent, and I think they should benefit from all the infrastructure that you're going to spend money on, but it also has to be available to others. Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor, and motion carries. All right, and next on the agenda, what's that? Sorry. Oh, thanks, Brian. Appreciate your input.
My pleasure, Mayor Wells. Thank you.
All right, we're on to 5.1.2, release of option for Tunner Drive, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you, through the mayor. Our director of development services is at the OPP, the PIBC conference, so she asked me to just speak to this. We have a staff report in front of you. This option to purchase was secured when Playtime Gaming was undertaken for the switch from the bingo facility into a gaming center. That option to purchase is no longer required. The multi-use pathway that was going to be part of this option to purchase was negotiated through other development. And the recommendation in front is to authorize the Director of Development Services to execute the release of the option to purchase covenant. The staff report provides some background as to why that's appropriate, and the option has expired. So we have this in front of council for their consideration, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have a question. I just wanted to show my appreciation for the hard work staff did to get that part of our active transportation network together, and I'm happy to move the motion at this time.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Now we're on to item 5.3.1 with the modified agenda, BC Healthy Communities Plan H Community Connectedness Grant Application. I'll pass it over to Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor, our Director of Rec, Culture and Community Services, Susie Saunders, is going to talk about this grant application.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council. The purpose of the report is to seek council's endorsement for the city to partner with the Comox Valley Early Years Collaborative in submitting a proposal to BC Healthy Communities Plan H Community Connectedness Grant in the amount of $5,000. We do have Dana Van Wright here, the coordinator for the Comox Valley Early Years Collaborative, should council have questions specific to their work. The grant proposal is to establish the Early Years Family Support Fair as an annual event to engage and educate and inform the community, as well as enhance supports and services for families with children from conception to age 8. The role of the city in this grant application is to be a key partner. We'll submit the proposal as written by the collaborative, and if successful, the city would receive the funds and then transfer them to the Comox Valley Family Services Association, who would act as the fiscal host for the collaborative. The Family Services Association would then take on all responsibility for financial accounting, invoicing, etc., and would submit a final financial report as well as project report to the city, which we would then submit to BC Healthy Communities at the end of the project. Happy to take any questions.
All right, sounds great. I don't see any questions, so I think you've done a okay. Recommendation's been moved by Councillor Cole Hamilton, and did you catch the seconder? Yep, we're good. Awesome. Any questions or comments, Councillor Hillian?
Mr. Mayor, just with the representative here, I think it's appropriate to just applaud the work that the collaborative does and providing all the services for the young people in the community, and we're very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And having just met with Child Development and Family Services on Sunday, and hearing that we are still lacking, I think, over 1,200 spaces right now, just really want to applaud the work that everybody's doing together, and again, lots of work ahead of us. So with that, all those in favor? And motion carries. And we'll move on to external reports and correspondence from the Office of the Ombudsman quarterly report. Okay, it's been received. And again, I don't think there was anything of note. Okay. Yeah, that was it. Sorry. We're good? Yeah. Okay. With that, all those in favor? Motion carries, and we'll move into internal reports and correspondence, and we'll start with 7.1 McPhee Meadows project update. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you. Through the mayor and council, it looks like Mr. Pitcher has his light on, so Mr. Pitcher will give us an update on the McPhee Meadows project.
Thank you. Happy to present this briefing note tonight. Following council's direction last summer, staff began design work on an accessible path, including geotechnical analysis, as well as an environmental assessment, as well as continuing our discussions with Nature Trust BC and Environment Canada. The geotechnical analysis revealed that modifying the steep slope at the entrance would significantly increase the risk of slope failure. Environmental assessments also confirmed that the proposed path would impact salmon habitat and require removal of over 30 trees. Many of those are large mature trees. As a result, the accessible option could not be supported by Environment Canada or Nature Trust BC without significant offsetting, which would impact project timelines and our project budget. So per council's direction last summer, we proceeded with the less impactful, but also a less accessible option. We're happy to report that we have completed detailed design for this project, and the construction tender is on the street as we speak. Construction is planned for this summer with an opening of the park planned for fall of 2025. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And I see some questions have arisen. Councillor Morin.
Not really a question, just a thank you. It's so nice to see a project that is proceeding, that we're going to see the light of day with, and although it doesn't meet the accessibility standards that we hope for, it does align with the donors' wishes and for this community benefit. So happy to see this briefing note and that we're moving along. Thank you.
Excellent. And Councillor Frisch.
I think I'm just trying to remember back, and I didn't see it in the report, how sorry, the change in slope, like, is that actually going to save us some money, I would assume? And sorry, I'm looking the wrong way, guys. Will that actually save us some money in the development of the park?
Yes, it will. It'll save significant money. The work that we would need to do to modify that slope would be very impactful and be very labor intensive. So yeah, we do have a reduced budget estimate for this project.
Which you identified earlier on. I think we may have. Did we previously? Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we've already kind of spent it. So good job. I had a quick question, kind of in the weeds, about it was a split rail fence, but it was made of concrete. And I'm just wondering how the decision came to use concrete in that setting.
That concrete fence, sorry, through the mayor to Councillor Frisch, that fence is our city standard fence. So we're trying to just maintain the same type of fencing across a lot of our park projects.
Fair enough. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. I do have a few questions. I think some of them pertaining to the staff report around phase 2 and phase 3. But I'll start with phase 1 because that's where we are now. And particularly of note related to some of the comments in the staff report around the environmental concerns raised by, I guess it's ECCC, around the pathway and water access. Now, it appears like the regulator has said that they don't support water access due to the ecological sensitivities along the water. How does the city plan in an ever challenging climate environment where people do need to access water? People will be utilizing that trail, which is close to the water, but we're not creating access. And I guess another question to that is, like, was it a hard no? Because it's not quite clear here. It's kind of alludes to their preferences that they would not like that because of the ecological impacts. But do we have to receive approval for them to create an entryway into the water?
Thank you for the question through the mayor to Councillor Jolicoeur. When you have these discussions with Environment Canada and with Nature Trust BC, they view themselves, I'd hate to speak for them, but they're willing to listen to anything, but they want to see offsetting. They want to see the mitigations that the city is willing to implement in order to protect the natural habitat and protect the natural environment. So they don't say no necessarily, but what they want to do, what they want to understand is how we would protect that environment. But one of the other issues that arose during the design was the need to implement native plantings throughout the site in order to offset our impacts to actually construct the park. And so we need a lot of that space in order to plant those native plantings here. So it starts to restrict how you could actually access the water because of those native plantings that are required.
As a follow-up to that, so park is opening, planned to be open in the fall. People will still likely be swimming potentially depending on how late into the fall. How do we plan to, without a managed access, how are we planning to either enforce people not to access the water through their own creation of paths? I just don't see that, like us being able to safeguard the ecological sensitivity of the water access if we don't create something for people to go through. So I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around that. Like, we're not gonna have bylaw staff down there kind of saying, you can't do that. Like, it's just not gonna happen. And so I fear that in the absence of us creating a city proper pathway to the water, that people are just gonna create their own pathway, causing potentially more damage than what we had hoped if we just said, there's nothing available for you. Not sure if. you have any thoughts on
Yeah, I
that?
appreciate the question. And on some level, I agree with you on that, Councillor Joker. Like, it's going to be will be a bit of a challenge, I would say, to keep people from accessing the river. We will have native plantings along that bank. So it will be more of a formalized planting plan. We'll have signage that says, you know, plantings in progress and please respect the planting. But yeah, short of bylaw staff, I suppose, enforcing that, yeah, it's going to be something that we're going to have to work with as we go here.
So just one more question, Mayor, on that as a follow-up.
Okay, as a follow-up.
So if we are not required, there wasn't a hard no. So we can make a decision to create water access. I just would like to hear that that's in our purview.
That's a great question. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I would say, what I would say is Nature Trust BC is a 40% owner of this site. And so I would suggest that we would need to communicate with Nature Trust BC and Environment Canada. Environment Canada were the approvers of the ecological gift, right? So we need their approval, I would say, for creating this beach access. So I think that would be the process that we would have to follow, I think, if we wanted to implement a beach access on the site.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Through the CIO to Mayor and Council, I think Mr. Pitcher is doing a great job trying to describe a very complex situation. It's not as simple as asking ECCC what's allowed and what's not allowed. They're sort of one stakeholder in a multi-stakeholder discussion in this arrangement. Unfortunately, it's been very challenging for staff to get to a very agreed upon solution with many parties and still develop a workable design. Is it possible to access the water? Yes, technically it may be. The path to get there would require significantly more negotiation and the offsets required, and the offsets that we're offsetting by making the access and trying to find a new spot to put those would be very, very challenging and impactful on the existing park design. Staff took the approach on this to focus on developing a workable design that meets the majority of council's vision for this land. We believe we've done that. We've got all the regulators on board. We do have our permitting in place. We do have a construction timeline for this summer. Is there an option to provide beach access in the future? Potentially. That would take us down the path of significantly more negotiations, discussions with the regulators. That may be included in phase 2 or phase 3 of these works, should council so desire to explore that further. But adding that to the scope of work now would very likely derail construction for the summer, I would say. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Garvin.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to provide some a request from council. Practical question, real life situation. If council, staff have given you the focus for our current work. If council would like to make a resolution that directs staff to negotiate that specific item, that would assist us, because that's clear political direction to the interest holders to support further that. So we don't want to derail as to quote our staff, we don't want to derail the work we have, and we don't want that request to delay. But clear direction from council requesting us to work on that, I think, is really important, because I think it's been identified that there's some water there and it's very close, and there's people that have been going through there for a long time. So it's a very practical question, because they've tried to build walls in many other communities, and that's not going to work in that situation. So with that political direction, then staff can move forward with solid direction. Sorry, I'll leave it to that.
All right, thanks very much. And Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And well, thanks to the manager for outlining that option. I think the thoughts and comments by Councillor Jolicoeur are on spot and quite wise. And I imagine staff thought about that as well. So I think the approach you're taking right now, let's get this going and potentially see what the reality is of public access and what people really do is probably also wise. And if we have to tackle a situation where there's a lot of trampling and activity we don't necessarily want to support, then I guess we'll have to tackle that down the road. But I wouldn't really want to hold up this process for something that is a bit of an unknown. So I think it was a good decision, and thanks for bringing that up. I'll have to keep an eye on this issue.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And Councillor McCullough.
Yeah, sharing similar comments to Councillor Frisch that it makes sense to me that we flag this to come back to and have a look at it when we're getting the next update around phase 2 and phase 3. Once we have the public in this space, it may become quite clear what needs to happen, and it is hard to predict exactly how that use is going to look along the riverbank until it's happening. One thing I would point out is that there is a bank that makes it easy enough to walk to the side of the river, but it's not a place where you would jump in to go for a swim. It's shallow. So, I mean, there's a lot of what ifs and how the public wants to access it. And we'd probably be better off just to flag it for having a look at further down the road. So maybe we could add that to the update when we hear more about the challenges with phase 2, which are referred to but not described in the staff report in great detail. So it sounds like that's a bigger discussion for down the road, and maybe we don't want to wade into it right now.
Thank you for the comment, Councillor McCollum. And I just wanted to raise, we spent a year, I would say, negotiating with Nature Trust BC and Environment Canada on this. It was a long process, I would say. And to note Councillor Jolicoeur's comment, I think what those interest holders would want to see is what the city would do to actually maintain access, what we would do. Like I know the comment about bylaw officers, but I think there would have to be, I think, a commitment on our part that perhaps bylaw officers were ensuring that we weren't causing destruction, I suppose, through otherwise natural habitat and actually just protecting the environment. So that was just a little bit of the discussion we had with those folks.
Yeah, and I think, it can feel sometimes disappointing when we blue skied things and it's like, these are all the things that are possible. But then when you get into the devil's always in the details and that kind of thing. So, but really appreciate it. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Under the financial implications, I'm just question of clarification. It has a project table for the costs over the lifespan of the projects, phase 1 through 3. And then the line below that says the cost estimates for construction are currently estimated at 1.4 million. So is it safe to assume that the total project budget, which are the 3 numbers above, the remainder of that is all design costs and consultant costs?
Thank you for the question, to the Mayor. So for phase 2 and phase 3, that is the line item for $298,000 is detailed design for phase 2 and phase 3, and the $2.8 million is the estimate for construction in 2027.
Right, and so the 1.4 million in the sentence below is for?
Yeah, phase one construction.
Phase 1 construction, thanks. Thank you for that. So because it's the first time we've talked about this since our motion on the Sixth Street Bridge. Is that going to be coming to us? I'm looking maybe at our CFO around the impact on our budget for the reallocation, the 400,000. Is that a separate process that we'll revisit that? How, you've mentioned it here, but I don't think we've talked about where that money is now going to come from. The reallocation of the 400,000 to Sixth Street.
So council will see it again once the project is like near actual spend. So we know that we are safely within our parameters expected. So possibly by budget cycle 26.
Okay. During the budget process.
Correct.
Thank you.
Like there isn't a plan to bring that specific amount of money directly to council. The plan is to let the project complete. And then once it's done, look at where that funding can be reallocated if there is extra.
Okay, thanks.
All righty, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the report and all the work involved. And I certainly support the direction we're going with here. It just sounds like you're giving us some very cautionary notes about whether phase 2 and 3 will actually happen or not. I'm just wondering what messaging we give to the community right now in that regard, particularly people who are interested in the patch of land along Menzies and the potential there, as well as I know there's been a lot of feedback that down on 2nd Street that people don't want a viewing platform. So I'm just wondering how we message to the community right now around the likelihood of those phases, which you've put question marks on here today.
Excellent question. Thank you very much. Through the CIO to Mayor and Council, as the report alludes to, there's been some lessons learned through the phase 1 design and development engagement with the environmental regulators. Based on those lessons, I would say some of the plans that were originally envisioned for phase 2 and 3 through the options analysis work may now not be possible for some sections. Some sections I think very much still will be possible, but I think there's quite a bit of engagement to be done with the environmental regulators and the Island Corridor Foundation before we can say for certain what will be included and what could not be included. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. And did you want to comment on?
Thank you. Through the mayor, if a member of council wanted to make a motion that directed staff to proceed contacting the regulator / co-owner about water access, that would be appropriate at this time.
Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council receive the McPhee Meadows project update and that council direct staff to pursue the issue of water access on the property with the regulators.
Second. All right. Any questions or comments? That seems pretty clear and articulate. All those in favor? Any opposed? One opposed? Okay. Councillor Frisch is opposed. All right. And moving on to management reports from June 2025. And if there's questions, maybe we'll do it by area. So we can start with engineering maybe. Are there any questions on engineering at all? Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I just was thinking I would see something regarding the youth environmental project in there, and it seems to be missing. Is it still going ahead? And if so, do you have anything to say about it?
Yes, thank you for the question. Through Sierra to Mayor and Council, we are remiss in including that. It has proceeded. Staff have been hired. Space has been allocated. There's been community engagement to find some projects for them to pursue. They've began scoping work, and some of the projects I believe should be kicking off soon. We've had a lot of great positive feedback, turnout, engagement from the community. It's been going great so far. Kind of embarrassed that we left it off the list. Actually, we usually like to promote those things when they go so well. Thank you for bringing that up.
Excellent. Appreciate that. Councillor McCollum.
Yes, 2 questions around the infrastructure and environmental engineering. I think that's the order we're going in.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, on the Lake Trail MUP, it's 99% detailed design complete, which is great. I was understanding that this project is also to be constructed this year, but I don't see that piece on this report. Might belong in a different department now that the design's complete. I'm just not sure, and I'm wondering if we can get an update on when that's expected to be commenced and completed.
Yes, thank you for the question. Through the CIO to Mayor and Council, yes, detailed design is largely complete. We are still waiting for some permitting outstanding. We had originally planned to construct this year. Due to the permitting timelines, that may now not be possible, or we may have to take a phased approach depending on what we hear back. So we're not certain at this time. We're still working with regulators to understand exactly what the impacts might be. We do plan to bring a report back to council in the very near future, as we do understand the clock is ticking and people are quite anxious to see this proceed. So please bear with us in the interim. We will have a report coming back soon. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Could I have
And
another?
Mr. Garbutt just had a comment as well.
If I'm not interrupting you, we acknowledge there's a very significant interest group that's trying to push this item forward. And we're in support of that, and council has been given clear direction, and we have a partnership with the CVRD electoral area director on the funding side. Like some developers, we have found ourselves in a real challenge on some of the environmental management items, and we have been working really hard, both with the ministries and the other agencies involved to try and go forward. But anytime our infamous lamprey and various other things are involved, it has really, really big consequences. So it's really unfortunate, and we need to get a report back to council on the status, because the interested public is very interested.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, it's been on our radar for quite a while. And I understand that things don't always go the way we expect them to. And in that thread, the Ryan Road sidewalk options analysis is complete, and we'll be getting a report soon on that. And then it outlines that we'll be doing detailed design later this year. And this is one of those things that sits on the report, and I'm never really quite sure exactly where it's at. I didn't realize that we're going to decide on an option and then do detailed design. I thought we might be further in this process than starting a design. Could you just clarify if the phasing for the capital project, the actual construction and completion of the project, is unchanged, or has the timeline moved again?
Excellent question. Thank you very much, through the CIO to Mayor and Council. The timeline is roughly in alignment still with the capital budget for this project. So we are still planning for construction next year. We are hoping to complete detailed design this year for this works. Again, we will have a report coming back soon. We don't mean to keep harping on the regulators. We have had some challenges coming to agreements on what the road treatment might look like in this area to address all the needs identified through our various master plans that have been adopted recently. So we've had some challenges there. We have landed on a concept or option that is now accepted by the governing regulator. We don't believe it will be a particularly challenging detailed design process or contentious. We do have some of our other required permitting in place already. It's been in place for a couple of years now, as we were anticipating to build this a while ago. We do hope to build this, as I said earlier, construct in 2026. So we are hoping to meet that timeline still. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. Just tagging on to Councillor McCollum's comment. Well, it does sound like, even though we might be struggling a bit with delays, this infrastructure will be there long before the increased folks on Braidwood to take advantage of it, the way things are going. I had a question about the Home Energy Navigator program. And do we keep any I know this is in partnership with the RD, but do we keep any stats on the uptake on that? I'm just curious if we know how, subscribed it is.
Yes, excellent question. Thank you. Through the CIO and Mayor and Council, we do have stats on that. I think we were about 30 or 40% uptake the last time I checked, but we are due to report back out on that for a status update. So we'll report back to council on that in the near future. It has been a very good news program and very well received by the community. Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's been some good promotion of it, but yeah, I'd be curious just to hear if we're getting any feedback on that and what difference it's been making. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Moran. I don't see any other questions for the infrastructure and environmental engineering, so maybe we'll move on to our recreation. Are there any questions on rec? Culture and community services? Councilor Schollaker.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Lots of things in progress, a lot of policy kind of foundational documents, and it's nice to, we've talked about it so much, but it's nice to kind of see it all laid out. My question is particularly around just the capacity of the department to actually get some of these items done. One of which, there's two items there that doesn't have a timeline, the safe spaces and the other safe item, and this is TBD. And then there's one around the child protection, which I think we've heard about once. Perhaps, I don't know if we got a briefing on that or if that was just in a management report, but I think that perhaps came to our attention after the safe spaces items. So I'm just wondering the sequencing of some of these items, and if staff require further direction for the ones that, at least the two that are council directed for a completion date. And I understand that the part of the answer will probably be capacity and resources to get the work done. So maybe we can also get an update from our staff around hiring the new cultural position and otherwise other positions that can support some of this work.
Thank you through the mayor to Councilor Schollaker. Yes, we are making our way through the significant amount of policy work that we have, and recognize that those two pieces, the safe and inclusive access and safe inclusive facilities, are two outstanding motions of council. We've been sort of ticking council motions off over the past year or two with the Memorial Bench program. We're coming back with a court usage study, and so these are next on the list. The work to do these two pieces are both policy oriented, so looking at our rental policy, and that policy work often happens in our administration department, which is currently a team of one, and then but also has significant operational impacts. And so our operational team is, to speak very candidly, just very maxed out with operating recreation, and so it is a significant piece of work that is on our list to do, and we're just trying to sort of tick off the motions as we can. That will be assisted by hopefully the soon to be hiring of the two new positions, the park planner. We have had posted, we have been in recruitment for about 8 months now without success, but we are hopeful. So I hope in the next couple of months we have more success. So that will make a significant difference, as that is on our administration team. And we're just in the process of finalizing the job description for the culture and events coordinator so that that can be posted as well. We need to, of course, go through a job description and classification process. But the park planner process has taken longer. And so that does mean that our one person, Joy Chan, is doing all of the planning along with me. So it's a bit of a challenge. In terms of the child protection, that's actually relatively new. It was probably on a previous management report. This is the work of developing corporate policy around child safety and protection, and the responsibility and duty to report for all residents in BC on any disclosures or suspicions of child abuse. So we it came to our attention last year that we have some improvement to do in this area around policy and procedure. So we've secured a consultant and we've been working with them since last fall. We are piloting draft policies and procedures this summer through our summer camp programs and aquatic programs. We'll refine those policies and then begin rolling them out across the city. They're most impactful to recreation, of course, because we work directly with children and youth the most. But it is a piece of policy work that we'll look to roll out across the city and, of course, bring information to council. But it was an area of risk that needed to be prioritized to be able to move that forward. And so we brought in some extra resources to do that.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks. Just a question on the pickleball feasibility and planning. This is, of course, something I get asked about on a regular basis out in the community. And I'm realizing that I'm not totally clear on our timeline for court development. We did put some funds aside. Now I'm not sure if that was just for this options analysis piece or if we allocated funding already for the development of some courts. And so I guess my question is, are we expecting to have some court development on the capital plan for next year? And if we've already funded that?
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor McCollum. So we do have, I believe it's 350,000 allocated in the capital plan towards pickleball court development, so capital construction. Those numbers could shift as we complete our options analysis. They were based on courts that were developed a couple of years ago. But we have secured a consultant. And so this just speaks a bit to our capacity piece. We've been outsourcing sort of park planning resources in the last 8 months to be able to move some work forward. So we are currently in options analysis right now. We're consulting with the Pickleball Association and tennis, looking at usage of both our outdoor courts as well as indoor pickleball across the valley. We expect to have that complete by the end of the summer with a recommendation to council on a preferred location. Once that's complete, we would proceed to detailed design. And again, depending on budget and timing, we are hoping that there could be construction in 2026.
So thanks for that. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just wondering if you might be able to update us on July 1st celebrations this year, and perhaps you're planning on that for the meeting on the 25th, but it seems like it's getting close.
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Hillian. It is getting close. We are well on our way for our plans for Canada Day. And so we don't typically bring an update to council. I can prepare a briefing note with an overview. That's not a problem. We'll have the night before concert as we usually do on the 30th of June, and then the full day of activities on July 1st, starting with the mile run, parade, the Ducky 500, and the concerts that'll be all afternoon at Lewis Park. We've also been working with our partners in our CMP and fire on safety and security planning for the event. And so that is also well underway and working very collaboratively. So happy to provide an update to council with a bit more information in a memo. That's not a problem.
Thanks very much. All right, I don't see any other questions under recreation. So next we have our corporate services and our corporate services stand-in. Mr. Garbutt, are there any questions for corporate services? I had one just around the website. Said the website is quite close to being replaced, 90%, and that there is beta testing going on. And I was just gonna, and it says the launch date is just over a month from now, so it might be nice for council to get a peekaboo at it as well. As part of that beta, I would highly would like to hear that.
Okay, that's quite an operational matter, but if council, what I'm hearing is council would like to see a preview of where we're going on the website. I noted, and so I'll pass it on. Okay.
That was my only.
One thing I just wanted to share with council from our this department, they are currently at LGMA. I had shared with the mayor and Councillor Jolicoeur, made a presentation yesterday in a workshop format with consultants who assisted in the development of our bylaw enforcement policy, and as well as the rollout of the bylaw strategic plan and the Parks and Open Space bylaw as a case study. It was extremely well received. Was really honored to be participating there, and the takeaway is that the work that we're doing is at the cutting edge for sure, both for very large municipalities in British Columbia as well as others. And we've been contacted quite a bit on those lessons learned. And I just wanted to identify just the great support that council gave us in resourcing that. And stay tuned because we're hopefully going to try and deliver that at UBCM, where there's a great opportunity to answer some questions.
Excellent. Much appreciated. And the only other, actually, I'll pass it over to Councillor Warren, just in case it's the same thing.
Yeah, no, this is just a quick question around the personal belongings storage options analysis. I'm thinking that when we got the washrooms Connect, that we did increase the storage capacity there. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Moore, and I wasn't intimately involved in that project, but my understanding is there was an incremental increase in their capacity to store outside, but definitely an improvement in the way belongings were stored outside, because I now believe that it can be stored in containers, not just
Yeah.
open to the elements.
Yeah, and I mean, cautiously optimistic, I haven't seen as much, I guess, things being abandoned or even people hauling as much stuff as usual. So I was hoping that maybe that was addressing some of that, but I guess that's anecdotal and we don't really have any hard data on whether that's the case. Thanks.
Through the mayor to Councillor Moran, these things are very much driven. There has been an improvement and outreach and work with individuals that are experiencing these issues, and you know, we're hopeful that it is getting better, and the acquisition and storage and keeping of materials is just something that really ebbs and flows. And so right now, I think we're in a good place.
Excellent. And I'll maybe conflate two things to make my previous commenter on the website, but under the Office 365 implementation and the training that's going to be happening with that, and thinking about the website, one of the nice things and one of the reasons I brought it up is I'm often referring people to the website, but maybe having an opportunity that council could or could not attend as they please, but just kind of what the new website is, how to navigate it, and therefore how we can help other people navigate it who are asking us. So maybe that articulates, so it's not us necessarily going, oh, this is good, or we don't like that color, but it's really so that we understand how that new website works. Because when you answered that one, that it was operational, for me, it was really just how do we help people use that website better. So hopefully that articulates it a little bit better.
Yeah, through the mayor, just very quick response. Absolute game changer in our website, and all of the items that council had talked about are going to be items that we're aware that we talked about are being addressed. Not all, sorry, that's a very big word. But yeah, I'm really walking through it to council to see the change in service and forms and the like. So definitely we will do a briefing with council and prior to its launch. And I think I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And on to the last, but not least, management report for the city manager. And see if there's any questions or comments. Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. My comment is not on the report specifically, but just in how we are formatting these reports. It seems like a good time to bring this up, that it would be really helpful if when there's a new item that it's marked new, so that we know it's the first time it's arriving on a report. And then if we could have some kind of like color code or some way where there's a notation when there is a change to the timeline since the last time, because it's very time consuming to go and pull out an old report and see what the changes are. And so the times change for a variety of reasons, which is not a problem, but there's no way for us to really see that, that a timeline's been pushed for one reason or another.
especially as we're seeing these reports on a fairly infrequent basis.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think it would help in terms of scanning through these, because it is a lot to go through, and I know it takes a fair amount of time from staff too. So I think it would just be a helpful improvement. Thanks.
And one of the things that we, for that same reason on the report that we're bringing to the DCPIA is we highlight in yellow anything that's new. So it's like literally like it's highlighted, it jumps right off the page because sometimes it's buried in other things. So really appreciate that comment. Councillor Morin. Oh, Joe Leclerc.
Oh, that was great. Thanks. I also agree that it would be helpful to know if things have been delayed or not, and from what point.
Or expedited.
Or expedited, thank you, yeah. Great point, Mayor. Under budget process, August 25 to April 26, the second line item there where it says review the financial plan with council per 25 financial plan discussion. That's quite broad. Is that the direction we gave around the few items, revenue, efficiency, right? I think it could be helpful to name those things, again, just to reiterate to the public what we mean by what we say, because again, I don't think it's clear what we mean by the 2025 financial plan direction. I think it's something we hear about pretty consistently. And so, yeah, I think that would be helpful to articulate in this report. So just a comment. And then my question, and I appreciate that we got a report in May on the First Nations consultant to support the reconciliation plan. Do we have an idea, because it doesn't actually say here, it just says that it's ongoing. Do we have an idea on when we suspect we'll get an initial report back on that item?
Through the mayor to Councillor Joe Leclerc, I'll check in with Ms. O'Connell. We're working on that together. It'll be in the fall. We've been engaging on quite a few items, and we have a lot of policy documents have been being prepared, et cetera, on that, and we're getting some good feedback. Also, some information through the reconciliation advisory table, and I believe there was a report to the board last night on that, and we requested that the two consultants working in support of the table make a delegation to council, and I'd like to do that before the break for the summer, but for the summer, so in July on that as well.
Thanks for that. And Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. I actually spurred on by the thoughts about how possibly to present the information in a more useful way. Is one of the elements on management reports of the CPRD is to state in that case, to state the actual date that the resolution was passed, which launched this particular action. And while it probably doesn't need to be down to the day and month, it would be useful to have sort of some reference, like perhaps month and year, as to when that particular project was launched. It just gives an idea of how we're moving through our workload. So if that's possible for staff to add that, thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And all right. Awesome. That was a great conversation. Recommendation has been moved and been seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Any opposed? Sorry, just in case I'm missing anything, we'll get into council reports. Councillor Cole-Hamilton. Councillor Frisch. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just going to mention two items because I'm planning to bring forward notices of motion related to both of them. The first is that I had a meeting yesterday in my role with the Sewage Commission with the representatives of the Back Road traffic issue, the people who are impacted by the traffic situation there. And serious concerns are being raised about the police ability to actually monitor and enforce speed limits on Back Road. And in relation to that, I'd like to bring forward a notice of motion requesting some council advocacy with the province around photo radar, basically, which in my view is the only way we can go with this. I missed the boat on this with AVICC, but I'm hoping that perhaps we can make some representation to government at this stage. The second issue is, and I did mention this last week, that I was privileged to be able to attend on behalf of the mayor the Mountie Camp graduation that took place at Goose Spit, and was very impressed with that. I understand that there's also a fire camp and that these happen on alternate years. There were a number of bursaries that were presented at the Mountie Camp, and the city was conspicuously absent. And I think it might be appropriate for the city to consider awarding a bursary to participants in those camps. So I'm hoping to bring forward a notice of motion related to that as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, both of those. And as somebody who gives away bursaries on a regular basis, and other acting mayors, really appreciate the comment. Councillor Jolicoeur.
Thanks, Mayor. I will just add two things. One was from, and I know that you're the representative for the DCBIA, but I'll just mention it because I think I was there for the portion of this, which is that Pulse in the Plaza is happening again this year. So that's approved. So there's going to be a few events happening in the evenings on Friday in front of the Comox Valley Art Gallery. And so that's a collaboration between multiple community groups and supported by the City of Courtenay, of course, and the DCBIA, as well as some really innovative assets that are going to be added to the downtown core, which I won't spoil it for the community. I'll let the DCBIA do that, but I just some really exciting things for community engagement downtown. And maybe I'll just speak, Mr. Mayor, if I can, about our meeting earlier today with Minister Anderson, the minister responsible for local government and rural affairs, and the city manager and Chair Cole Hamilton, and the mayor and myself took the minister on a tour of Courtenay, and we got to share our concerns about the BC Housing Project on Braidwood. We spoke about the Anderton Dyke Project, the Downtown Vitalization Project, as well as some of our recreational facilities at the Lewis Park, Lewis Center, and the Courtenay Pool. So it was a really successful visit. I think she took away a lot of things. The cabinet is meeting up in Campbell River, and we hope that our initiatives today with her was able to move some of those projects forward. Thanks.
Thanks for those updates for sure. Appreciate it. And Councillor McCollum. Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. I have a couple things. Most of them are arts related. I attended the art gallery AGM, and I just wanted to say that the city was specifically mentioned just in great appreciation for the support that we provide the art gallery and the arts community in general. And it was noted that there are municipalities that are basically gutting arts funding. And one north of us, and it's really impacting the programming. And just to note that the art gallery and the Arts Council folks were also there, and how accessible that programming is, and how inclusive it is of so many different folks. And there's just great things happening at the art gallery. And I'll just note that coming up this Saturday, I know that we received an email about it, but there's an art opening Because Not Despite, which is a program that focuses on neurodivergence and creative practice. And I think these are just some of the really innovative things that our art gallery and arts community are doing that really, I think, align with our values around inclusivity and sense of belonging. And we know that the more we celebrate the arts and bring arts out into the community, the better our community is really for everybody. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go to that because I'm attending a play in Nanaimo, which is an award-winning play by a local director, Robinson Wilson. I just wanted to mention his play Blackbird won the Zone Festival for the island, and it's going to the BC competition, and it's going to be performed in Nanaimo this week. So just some accolades to our local theater community. So I just wanted to kind of celebrate the arts in my update, and just how amazing the arts community is. And thank you to staff who supports the programming and arts groups. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Moran. I'll maybe mention one of the other MLAs that I met with yesterday, Minister Kelly Green, the Minister of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. Again, very much similar to today's tours. The focus was at Enderton Dyke, and I really have to give great kudos to our staff who did an amazing job, not just yesterday, but today as well, making sure that the technical details of the challenges that we have and the reasons that we need their support. Also, many councillors attended FCM. So I just want to, again, thank those that went to FCM. And I believe Councillor Hillian was our designated survivor. So that was much appreciated staying back for us. And then lastly, again, I spent a week in Taiwan for the World Masters Games, where I had the privilege of spending time with the mayor of Taipei and mayor of New Taipei, and understanding how they interact with each other, very much like us in the regional district, I would say. But also, it was a great cultural trip, but actually, and met with the Canadian Trade Office over there, and also had I would say, a fantastic time trying to build relationships with Taiwan. So much appreciated. With that, I believe we have another in-camera resolution. All right, all those in favor? Motion carries, and we are going to move into camera.
I don't think we did. In camera yet. Oh, yeah.
I just moved the motion to camera.
And I